Hello, my friends. Welcome to Lindy's Magpie Reads. If you want to hear about the books that I've been reading, you're in the right place. I'm also going to tell you a little bit about garden stuff and eating flowers. Yeah, mostly books though. I finished 6 books recently since my last video, and that's what I'm going to tell you about in just a minute. But first, the Horticulture Center for the Pacific is a wonderful garden that's here in Victoria, and I went there yesterday with a couple of friends and Lori, and at the little cafe that's located there, I had a dandelion latte. It was presented so beautifully with a flower on top, and where I was sitting, there was a dandelion wallpaper behind me. It was totally in theme. It's a beverage that's made with roasted dandelion and chicory root. It was done with oat milk, some maple syrup, and I have some roasted dandelion root that I have prepared myself, so I am going to try recreating that latte. It was so yummy. And the other flower beverage that I've had recently is lilac water. So there's this beautiful lilac in the garden, in the house where we're renting. I think it's a sensation lilac. It's purple and white flowers, and I just cut some of the blooms and infused water with lilac. It's delicious. The other spring bloom that's all over the place right now in Victoria is rhododendrons. So at the end of this video, I'm going to include a few photos of rhododendrons if you want to stick around for that. They bloom over quite a wide stretch of time, and some of the rhodos are finished, some haven't opened yet, but I think the majority, this is a perfect time to be seeing them. Some of them are scented. They come in lots of different colors. Some are huge, some are tiny blossoms. It's just so much variety, and they're beautiful. But speaking of springtime, there is a booktube readathon going on right now that is hosted by Natalie of Curious Reader, and Heidi of My Reading Life, and Doris of Aldi Books, and Emma of Cup of Books. So the idea of Springathon is to read nature-related writing, nature writing, and I am currently buddy reading with Natalie this classic, Nan Shepherd's The Living Mountain. We're just reading 1 chapter a day, and it's only about 100 pages long, and the writing is gorgeous, and that's what I'm doing for Springathon. I'll tell you more about it when I finish reading it. So on to the books that I've finished, starting with an audiobook that's a memoir in essays called Dinner on Monster Island, and it's by Tania De Rozario. She reads the audiobook herself. So in it, she talks about growing up in Singapore as a brown, queer, fat girl and adolescent. She is of Eurasian descent. She talks about how, as a policy during the time that she was young, I don't know if it's still in existence, but everybody had to be thin. And so any school children who were fat were shamed, put on diets at school, made to do exercise while other students were eating, that sort of thing. Throughout these essays, what comes up a lot is the nature of monsters and what it means to be different, because Singapore is a society that stresses everybody being the same. So for someone like Tania, who's not of Chinese descent, she immediately sticks out for that reason, but also for being queer. She writes, "To this day, the Singapore media machine remains tightly controlled, and positive representations of queer characters remain prohibited on public television. Broadcasting a show that contains a same-sex kiss or a happy and hopeful same-sex family can result, and has resulted, in fines of up to $15,000. There is one example that she gives of when she was organizing an art exhibit in Singapore. There was a stop-motion film done by Alicia Lim, in which she made herself, she represented herself as a plasticine character and was recounting an experience in secondary school where she had a crush on another girl. And the film ends with her asking herself, "Am I gay?" And this film is less than 1 minute long. But she was required to submit it to a Singapore Film Board and have it rated. It came back with a mature content for age 16 and up rating. And in order to screen it at this art show, she would have to pay a $10,000 deposit. So it ended up not being screened. People were informed where they could view it for free on YouTube. I tried to find it on YouTube and I couldn't. If any of you know of it and can tell me how to find it, please let me know, because I would love to see it. I did find out that Alicia Lim uses they, them pronouns, grew up in Singapore, and I think is in Canada now, I'm not sure. Tania De Rozario is currently living in Canada. She came here to study. Another example of the control of the Singapore government is that even though consumption of marijuana is legal in Canada, if she returns to Singapore and there is any trace of drugs in her system, she can be jailed for that. In this second half of this collection of essays, she takes a larger view of Singaporean society and says, "Questions we don't ask enough. What is the role of citizen complicity in government oppression? How do fear and disempowerment drive us to police one another? If we feed our neighbor to the monster at lunchtime, will it return for us at dinner?" I thought this was an excellent memoir and I highly recommend it. And next, I have 5 books that are all by Indigenous authors, and they're of various forms. I'm going to start with a picture book biography of Maria Martinez. It's called Shaped by Her Hands, Potter Maria Martinez. The book is authored by Anna Harber Freeman and Barbara Gonzalez. Barbara Gonzalez is the eldest great-grandchild of Maria Martinez. And Anna Harber Freeman also has Indigenous ancestry from the Osage people. And the illustrator, Aphelandra, is of mixed Oneida and Filipino ancestry. Maria Martinez was famous for this particular style of Tewa black pottery, and she was the most famous Native American potter of her time. And the art has got lots of turquoise and orange, which in this digital style, very sweet. Talking about how she learned to create this special effect, trying to recreate what anthropologists, some samples of ancient pottery that had been found. She and Barbara Gonzalez, they're from the Tewa people of San Ildefonso Pueblo in New Mexico. Next, I have a collection of poetry, Crushed Wild Mint, and it's by Jess, Housty. Housty is of Heiltsuk and mixed settler ancestry. She was born and grew up in Bella Bella, and that's where she lives now with her husband and their children. And this is her first collection. It has garnered all kinds of critical acclaim, shortlisted for the Bill Duthie Booksellers Award and shortlisted for the Dorothy Livesey Poetry Award, the shortlisted for the Gerald Lampert Memorial Award, and shortlisted for the Pat Lowther Memorial Award. For me, I had such an interesting experience reading these poems and rereading them and trying to figure out why some parts really worked for me and some parts did not at all. Like within the same poem, there were often parts where like, oh, yeah, that's nice. And then, no. So I want to give you some examples. She's writing about nature. She's writing about the importance of our connection with nature and the land, and that there's a spiritual aspect to it. But sometimes there's just too much leaning on the new agey therapy speak. Poetry is often so personal. So, examples. Breath. Take a fistful of wild rose petals. Be unhurried as you pile them on your outstretched tongue and feel their surprising weight. Grind their full pure perfume in your molars and turn your breath into medicine. It's your right to be in pain, my love. One of my children believes that all wind originates in the bellies of wolves, that storms come from their howling. What if we howled roses? Maybe we could trust that the rains to come would be soft. It's also your right to heal. So most of that poem just resonates so lovely through me. And yet, the line, "It's your right to be in pain, my love," kind of makes me go, urge? What? And then the final line, "It's also your right to heal." So I see how those two lines work together, but for me, there's a preachiness to it that it just doesn't work for me. This poem I really loved. It's called "To the Scientist Who Called My Beloved Salmonberries Insipid." She's writing about salmonberries and how seeing them described in a guidebook as insipid made her feel that they were unworthy, even though she had loved them as a child. And she says, "I reclaim them now and I ask their forgiveness. They are my kin and they are rich. I'm sorry they don't bless your table. Everyone deserves salmonberries." I grew up loving wild berries of all kinds, and I remember seeing dismissive descriptions in guidebooks about their flavor and getting kind of insulted by that. In the poem Fall, this is just one section. What surrounds you that no longer serves you? Okay, Joni's got to say hello here. Here she is. Yeah, all right. She's on my lap. In the poem Fall, I'm just going to read you a little bit of that as an example of the sort of therapy speak that kind of rubs me the wrong way. What surrounds you that no longer serves you? Let it go. Let it break down and reimagine itself. Reimagine yourself too, and breathe into the ways your body holds the work you do. Embody only what serves you. Carry it in your bones. So, like I said, some of these lines I find beautiful. Some just don't work for me. So, yeah, this is one of those collections that, you know, based on what I've said, you probably have a good idea on if this is a work for you or not. And next, I have another memoir, and this one is written in both poetry and prose. It's called Spílexm, A Weaving of Recovery, Resilience, and Resurgence, and it's by Nicola I Campbell. The author is Nlaka'pamux and Syilx on her mother's side, and Métis on her father's side. And the initial part of this book is written as letters that her mother may have written to her sister back in 1973 from Saskatchewan when Nicola was just a baby. And we find out through those letters how Nicola's father died. And then after that they move from Saskatchewan to BC. Nicola grows up in the company of her mother's people. I started out by listening to this as an audiobook, and the book is full of indigenous language words, and I realized that this is going to be a great opportunity for me to find out how this type of orthography is pronounced. So I picked up a paper copy of Spílexm at the library, and I did this as an audio text combo. So I was about a third of the way through the audiobook when I started over again, and I discovered another treat that I wouldn't have known if I didn't have the print copy, and that is that there are some concrete poems. I'll show you what I mean. Where the poem takes the shape of things on the page, the apple and the frog. And if you only have the print copy, there's also some clues to pronunciation and meaning. So, for example, in the poem Tzaltzala, we're going camping today. The huckleberries are ready. Mom, how do you say huckleberries in our language? Tzaltzala. The sound rolls off her tongue. Careful to mimic every sound, I say tzaltzala. Of all the berries we harvest through the year, tzaltzala are my favorite. They are super sweet and tangy, dark purple and super shiny, with a tiny circle where the stem grasps the berry. And it goes on describing how the whole extended family packs up and travels to where they pick the berries. On her father's side, Nicola Campbell is a descendant of Maria Campbell, the author of Half-Breed. She writes about putting together pieces of the puzzle, an understanding of alcoholism and other addictions, and violence against women that's going on. She talks about residential schools. Now, before publishing this, Nicola Campbell has published a number of children's picture books about residential school, including an award-winning one, Syilx, and also about spending time with her grandmother, her Yaya, and that's called A Day with Yaya. So I do encourage you to look for picture books by Nicola Campbell as well. I thought this was fantastic, and the long glossary at the end I listened to several times, so I had the words in front of me and Nicola Campbell's pronunciation in my ear, and I feel like I'm getting more of a grip on the orthography that's used for a lot of the languages of Indigenous people in British Columbia. So, yay! Next up is a collection of short stories by a Nlaka'pamux author, G.A. Grissenthwaite, and I read his debut novel, Home Waltz, last year or the year before, can't remember. That book has a very distinctive voice. The narrator is a teen boy called Skeeto. And in this collection, Tales for Late Night Bonfires, there's again a very distinctive voice. And he has a unique way of combining oral and written styles of storytelling that I have to just give you an example so you know what I'm talking about. So this is in a story called 3 Bucks, and there are old men who are telling stories about hunting deer, and one of them is talking about how he had neglected to bring water with him and it was really hot. He had stopped and had to rest. Maybe he had drunk a little too much, but anyway, he felt a nudge. It was a deer. That 5-pointer, muzzle in my face. Maybe he tapped me with his coop stick, hey hey. So, old Miracle heard that white-tailed talk. No telling what you could hear when you stop and listen. But there's more to Miracle's story. Listen. And then he goes back to what Miracle was saying. So that deer, 5 points in my rib, 10. You hear about it sometimes. Mad buck gores a guy, kicks him. Front hooves, not back ones like mules, front ones, kick, 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 kick. If this is how I go this way, gored by a 5-point white-tailed. But not gored. Buck says, hang on, mighty hunter, take you someplace cool, someplace wet, get you a drink of water, cool down. So I says to that 5-pointer, Quoxamuch. What else can you say but Quoxamuch? Which means thank you. So you see what I mean about how there's the storyteller part and then recounting what Miracle said. That's just, and the way that Grissenthwaite captures a particular way of speaking, the use of language is just fantastic. There's another story that's about a Sasquatch, and he's having trouble hiding in the forest because the trees are all so skinny now. After they've been logged, now there's just small trees everywhere, and them trees make good toothpicks nowadays. Maybe pretty good pulp for paper, but not good planks. So in another part of the story, they talk about the supplies that you can buy at the gas station, including flat little fir trees called little trees. They look kind of like fir, maybe spruce, and smell kind of like pine, but the pine your bathroom kind of smells like. Not the kind of pine that once grew in the bush. And these pine-scented fresheners come into the story with a Sasquatch that's very stinky. And that story's called Little Trees. And one more example. So in this story, we've got a little boy who is so full of energy, keeps climbing out of his crib, Anyways, Chucky suggests stringing a coil of razor wire around the top of the crib, like you see in them prison movies, he says. Now, Chucky always ends his crazy talk with a loud laugh, and when no one else joins in, he goes, "I was joking, geez, you." So, like I said, it's the flavor of the language is just so beautifully rendered. These are a fun series of stories to read, except for the last one. Did not work for me, and it's a long one. It's almost a novella. This one is about some immortal beings, including one that's the real Santa. That one just didn't work for me, even though there were parts in it that I really liked. Definitely like Grissenthwaite's style though, and I will pick up anything that he comes out with in the future. Now, last up, this is my favorite of all of that I've been telling you about today, and that is another collection of short stories. This is called Last Woman, and it's by Carleigh Baker. She is of Nehiyaw and Métis and settler ancestry, and she is queer as well. I listened to the audiobook, and it's narrated by 7 different people. She did have a previous collection of short stories called Bad Endings. I read it about 6 years ago. I looked on Goodreads and I saw that I rated it 6 stars, but no stories kind of stayed with me. This one I think will stay with me. It's partly the conversational style that she uses for her stories, also the content. Her characters are described as both wildly misguided and a product of the misguided times in which we live. There's a haunted mall, weird rituals by women in a co-op. There's a girl in grade 4 with a mean teacher, and another girl, I think she's in grade 2, also with a mean teacher. In that one, it's told from an adult viewpoint, looking back on an art project. I could feel for that. There's lots of humor, including of the self-referential type. So, for example, in a story called Catechism, the narrator is teaching an undergraduate class on speculative fiction. And she's teaching it half-heartedly, if she was honest, since genre writing is tiresome, long-winded, and gimmicky. That's what her profs always said. There's a story called Patron Saint of the Hesitant, and the narrator of that one says, "I am an empath, a true knower of the people." And I just found that one hilarious. Send up of the kind of people who would say, "I am an empath." There are 3 stories called Billionaires, part 1, 2, and 3, and in those, aliens are studying humans on Earth. Here's the line. "We'll mention here that a lot of humans are obsessed with the destruction of their planet, and rightly so. They seem to be fast-tracking it." So the concern that Carleigh Baker has for the environment and what's happening to our planet comes through in a lot of these stories. Like there's ozone layer depletion. There's one story where a community is evacuated because of a forest fire, and another story where a community is flooded. There's an earthquake. There's one where a woman is playing a post-apocalyptic game. That's the scenario. The haunted mall story talks about consumerism and its effect on the environment. The story, Where Were You? That one is from a junior high girl's point of view. And she's talking about her friend. She always had the best hair, bangs that went nearly 3 inches straight up and cascaded into a churning wave of crunchy curls from her temples to her shoulders, where they softened a bit into a wash and wear perm held in place with
scads of
aquanet. Which brings me to Spílexm, and there's a section in here where she talks about hair like that, so I'm just going to read you that bit. It's called Rock Star Hair. How to have perfectly feathered hair. Preheat curling iron and blow dry hair. For thick Indian hair, one must apply the first coat of Finesse Extra Hold hairspray while hair is in the preheated curling iron. Do not feather until all hair is completely curled. Feather with a special brush. Back comb, add additional curls as needed. Hairspray again. Back comb some more until perfection is achieved. Apply more Finesse Extra Hold hairspray. Upon completion, the hair should be perfectly solid. Okay, that's all I've got for you today. Thank you so very much for watching, and I appreciate hearing from you, so please say hello in the comments down below. Tell me if you've read any of these, if you're interested in picking up any of these, and do you remember those days with the hair and the hairspray? Stick around if you want to see a few photos of rhododendrons, and I wish you happy reading, and I will see you all soon in my next video. Bye for now.